Hey, this is Kabir with Hey, I Did Something, and I want to run you through part of a talk that I did a little while ago that was about my journey in AI so far. I've been at it for a little over a year now, full time, and I found that a lot of my friends who are in technology, they actually don't have as much time as I do to delve into this. And so it's really easy to feel like you're constantly falling behind. And so my goal here is to do like a level 0, level 1, and just kind of slowly progress through this path. And there are multiple ways, if you look at this map, that you can kind of progress through it. And this is kind of a fun way of thinking about it. I think like some people come in through this port of curiosity, which is I think where I started just delving into things. Let's see if this is around. And in some cases, you might come in through the port of necessity because you just have to get stuff done for work, or people are expecting you to know this stuff. And I think the port of no fear, which is down here at the bottom, is delving into the real technical side. So I think it is actually a lot easier and less overwhelming if you move through it piece at a time, which is what I found, was that just start something pretty simple, moving from ChatGPT to automations and eventually to more code related things if you want to go that direction. But I think to get started, level 0 is really just about understanding the mental model of it. And so I like to think about Google because, you know, for a lot of us, we grew up in a internet Google infused era. And for me, Google is like native to me. There's no problem with using it. If I gave it to my mom or my dad, they could also find things like directions to an ice cream shop, but they might not be as fast at it. And I am finding that they might do things like look for Facebook photos of a friend and not understand why Facebook photos might not be on Google. And I think that goes down to a really important concept of like how your mental model works around tech, because with a new technology, you know, the people who learned how to use Google really well didn't do it by reading a book or going through a tutorial. And so you kind of have to have a mental model that is constantly evolving, and Google evolved over 20 years, but AI is moving a lot faster than that. And so it's important to just use the tools as they come around and put a little bit of time each day, but move through them in a progressive manner. Otherwise it gets really overwhelming. And so the goal, I think, is to really figure out where can you insert yourself and like what is the next step, as opposed to trying to be on the extreme end of the forefront of what's happening right now. And if you do, I think it's actually more doable than anybody thinks in a fairly small amount of time per day. So one of the other concepts I think is that it's really changing what it takes to delve into this. It used to be that to stay in touch with some of the cutting edge tech that startups here in the Bay Area are using, you kind of had to have a technical background or an engineering background. And now that these models, like the language of them is just natural language as opposed to code, that is really changing, and that barrier to entry is really changing. And so that's really exciting. I think that there are different things that are positives and negatives with Google. There are kind of, using Google as like your portal to the internet, and there are constraints on the technology. For example, Google can't search inside of your Gmail without you going to Gmail, and Google can't find things inside of Facebook. And with ChatGPT and these large language models and the coding agents, they will hallucinate, and that's a different type of error. But it's important to have that also in your understanding of why those errors occur, so that you don't go, doing the equivalent of looking for Instagram photos in Google when you're using a large language model. And so I think that, as we kind of progress through this, I want to map out the journey and, move from the place where you're not quite sure how to use it, or you should be using it, but you're not sure if you're using it really well, to a place of feeling confidence. And it actually gets really exciting as soon as you are feeling a little bit more well-versed and confident about it. And what we want to avoid is kind of this funny idea of in the river of AI disillusionment, which is like, if you're in the kind of camp where you're like, oh, I just want to avoid this, I want to skip this one, it's moving a little too fast for me. I think it's just a matter of like chunking it down enough. And that's what I found with my friends who I gave this talk to, that if you chunk it down enough, it's actually really, really doable. And, if you do end up in the river of disillusionment, then you kind of like start thinking more about the doomsdown scenarios and less about the ways that AI can empower you. And if you don't know how to use the tools from a skill level, you'll end up in this kind of like, it's all just AI slop, which tends to be usually a sign that, at least at this point, that we haven't used the tools effectively. It's a skill issue versus a capability issue. Okay, so I hope that kind of lays the groundwork for where we're going. And then in the next video, I'll probably go a little bit more into AI as a thought partner and using AI tools, etc., etc. All right. See you next time.